Strange, thought the man from outside, as he stepped over the wide arc of salt marking the border between the overgrown woods and the circular clearing the town was built in. Very strange, thought the man, as he searched in vain for the town on the map he was carrying. As he walked toward the cluster of farms and buildings to investigate, the wind was behind him, seeming to push him forward. The buildings of the city looked old, and they bore the marks of unskilled craftsmen. Dented lumber was stacked into rotting walls with empty door frames. Those that were not pyramids made use of dubious roofing materials. Dead leaves on crooked wooden grates, fabric staked into the corners, or mats of straw stained with sap. The people of the city stared around corners and from across streets to try and get a good look at the man from outside as he stepped into town. His was the first face they had seen in quite some time. It drifted from side to side, writhing and contorting in ways that the townsfolk hardly remembered, and that they were sure they would soon forget again. The man from outside had been furrowing his brow, wondering at the strange inhabitants of the town. Why are they watching me, he wondered. Why are they hiding, he wondered. Why are they all wearing masks, he wondered. Whatever spell was holding the townspeople back broke for a moment, when one of their young ran up to meet the visitor. The child must have been about a decade old by their height, for more detail was hard to find behind the feathery hood over their face. The man from outside saw no human features. There were only the shadows staring through the eyes of the mask, and the small stone beak that had been fastened to it. "Hey, mister, where's your mask?" called the owl as it ran up to meet the visitor. It was stopped by a woman in a white mask. A stern voice escaped from its blank expression. "What did I say about strangers?" hissed the porcelain-faced woman as she dragged the owl back into the crowd. The townspeople redoubled their efforts to avoid the man from outside after that. The next mask to speak to him was made of wood. It was painted green, and it had 2 tufts of wool sticking out at the top. Spots of black dye in the white fibers seemed to stare at the man from outside. "Here," said the frog, extending a white-knuckled hand. "Put this on." In his grasp was a woven basket with 2 holes punched in, a third of its height from the base. The man from outside slowly took the basket, turning it over in his hands to determine its purpose, before lowering it over his puzzled expression. Things looked different, he thought, as he took in the sights through the eye holes punched in the basket. Smaller. "How long have you been traveling?" asked the frog. 2 days, said the man from outside. "I'm just on my way north from the river." "It's midday. Have you eaten yet?" The basket turned from side to side. "No need to dip into the supplies you're carrying while you're here. Follow me." The man from outside supposed that there was no harm in saving his rations for between towns. He and the frog walked to one of the least decrepit lean-tos in the area and ducked through a tarp over its entrance. In one corner was a mat. A bunched-up quilted sheet rested in the middle, and an overstuffed pillow lay beside it. Across from the mat stood a brass-framed mirror about 5 feet tall. The frog stood beside it, cutting into a pomegranate on top of a wood-fired stone oven. The man from outside looked into the mirror. Not seeing his face look back was, like many things about the town, strange. The frog nodded toward the mirror. You like it? I bet it's the fanciest thing in town. It's just an ordinary mirror, I suppose. The man from outside looked at the frog's reflection. Still, mirrors are trustworthy. If you've got a question about yourself, a person might try to spare your feelings. A mirror isn't going to lie. You'd be surprised, said the frog, opening the oven. The frog placed 2 ceramic plates, each carrying a baked potato and a salad, on the floor. He sat on his knees and turned his face down, pushing the mask just far enough away to fit a bite in without showing what lay beneath. They finished the meal in silence. Well, I should be on my way now, said the man from outside. I thought that too, said the frog, when I first arrived. I had an important delivery to make. The frog glanced at the mirror. Why did you stay? I didn't want to leave, said the frog. Nobody does. Who would want to stay in a place like this, thought the man from outside. The sun was setting, and the man from outside had not left the city. It's not much, but you can borrow this, said the frog, offering the man his quilted blanket. It might be a bit cramped if you try to sleep in here, though. I spent the last 2 nights in the woods, said the man from outside, face a grin. This is more comfort than I expected. Thank you. Keep that mask on, said the frog. Why? Asked the man from outside. The frog looked at the ground. You have to. Could you speak a little less cryptically? A moment passed. No, said the frog. The man from outside carried the quilt around town until he found an empty house. Its walls sported gaps and mushrooms, but they could at least block some of the cold breeze beginning to sweep through the town. Its roof seemed to have collapsed. Better for that to happen beforehand than while I was inside, thought the man, as he set aside his basket for the night and spread the quilt to lie down on and sleep. The man from outside woke up feeling numb in the face and sore everywhere else. The sun was well into its journey across the sky by the time he saw it, but the grass in the town was still crisp and white from the night's gelid air. The man lowered the basket back over his head and began clearing the collapsed roof from his borrowed shelter. Sleeping on this mess was a bad idea, he thought, as he tried to stretch out his lower back. While moving the debris, the man from outside uncovered something. It was smooth, nearly white in color, beneath the layer of mold on it. Cautiously, the man from outside wiped away the grime. The texture of the object was troubling, though he could not quite match the feeling to any particular memory. It caused a primal dread to well up in his chest. He tried to ignore it. He pulled a piece of faded red fabric from between the object and a panel of wood beside it. Parts of it had been eaten away by time, rendering its original purpose an enigma. What remained of the pattern on it was troubling in a way that the man from outside could scarcely understand, much less articulate. But he had more pressing troubles to resolve. He cast the circle of felt away. Pushing the wood panel aside revealed enough of the object to confirm the unspoken fear he had tried to avoid. All of the air in his lungs left him. The townspeople rushed to the old house to investigate the sudden shriek echoing from it. Looking past the pile of dead wood in front of the doorway, they found the visitor inside. His basket mask rested at an odd angle as he pressed himself against the wall, across from what had nearly decayed into a human skeleton. The man from outside pushed past them, swatting flies from his arms. So, mused the porcelain-faced woman, "You still in there after all?" "Who was that?" asked the man from outside, once he had regained his composure. "That old creep was here before anyone else I know," said the porcelain-faced woman. "Creep? He always seemed to be watching us, but he never said a word." "What does that say about you?" thought the man from outside, remembering the day before. Determined to reclaim the old house, the man from outside moved all the roofing material he could before turning his attention to the cadaver. Its ribs had been crushed, presumably by the roof as it fell. With the weight on its chest removed, the broken bones did very little to contain the reddish-gray pumice that the maggots were feeding on. While some patches of what was once skin remained, none were on the thing's face. The exposed skull was expressionless, and yet managed to look empty. As the stench of death spread into the air, the man from outside picked up his quilt and decided against spending another night in the old creep's house. Before the man from outside got through the door, his eye caught on a scrap of parchment in a pile of hand bones beside the body. He left the quilt on the ground beside the demolished roof. The man then returned to the house. With one hand, he reached into his basket to pinch his nose, and with the other he snatched up the note before rushing outside. Strange, thought the man from outside. The old creep wasn't wearing a mask. The note was short. "I have learned that those who speak of curses seldom speak after, and I can only assume that those who write," it read. The abrupt ending was punctuated only by dried blood along the torn edge of the parchment. After spending most of the remainder of the day canvassing the city, the man from outside finally received shelter from one of the masked locals. A voice echoed from the steel helmet in front of him. "Just for tonight, you hear?" insisted the knight. "Gotta take care of my friend. He's sick, but he should be better tomorrow." The man from outside nodded and waited for the knight to depart. He spread his quilt in the knight's home and set his basket aside to sleep. As he drifted into the dark, he heard someone approaching. Their footsteps were not loud enough to keep him awake. The man from outside had closed his eyes, staring at a canopy of dead leaves. As they drifted open, they took in the green of live ones. Numb in the face once again, the man sat up to look at his surroundings. The line of salt separating the town from the woods lay in front of him. "Why am I back in the woods?" he thought. "Actually, why didn't I leave before?" As he untangled himself from the quilt that had been wrapped around him, the man saw the brass frame of the frog's mirror behind him. Its glass was strewn about, with some shards bearing bloody edges. He looked over himself. He seemed unharmed. "Not mine, then," he thought. The blood marked a trail into the forest before being lost in the overgrown brambles. The man from outside reached up and felt his face. Someone had covered it with a familiar-feeling wooden mask. He felt a bit of a sting as he removed it. The inside was lined with a striking crimson velvet, scored with an unsettling pattern of lines. The shapes he felt on the front did not match the shallow ones he saw on the back. He wanted to look at the mask, but he froze as an immense weight seemed to settle in his chest. He closed his eyes to shut out the fear, and slowly turned the mask over in his hands. There he sat for what felt like an eternity. When the man from outside finally forced his eyelids to part, he saw what he had missed in the mirror 2 days prior. His own face stared back, trembling in his hands with empty eyes. He threw it over the line of salt and skittered backwards further into the woods. His hands found glass, but he hardly felt it sink into them, as his throat tightened and his temperature seemed to drop. The man from outside reached up with one of his now bleeding hands to where the mask had been. At contact, pain shot through his cheek. He recoiled at the unfamiliarity of the sensation from both sides. What he should have felt, the mundanity of skin brushing on skin, eluded him in favor of something altogether less welcoming. On his left was the mirror, so the man from outside looked to his right. There he found the frog's mask, snared in the brambles. Across its painted wooden surface was a new design that the man from outside studied for a minute, and recognized as words. "I'm sorry," said the frog. "I wanted to keep you from making the mistakes I did, but if I had spoken, at least I can try to set you free." The man from outside turned the frog's mask over. The inside bore the same velvet lining as his own mask. The last thing left unexamined was the mirror. The glass on the ground had lost its purpose, but a corner in the frame still told the truth to anyone who dared ask. Finally, outside the town once again, the man from outside looked into the mirror and was no more.